Excuse me. Okay, so just in any dungeon, Spitacern, and just gonna go over just the basic ways it's set up. On the left small area here, these are mostly my attacks that I'm going to be doing for the Paladin. A little bit of defensive stuff here. Um, Movement for, quick moving. I generally set up my characters this way every time. My mounts go here, the hearth goes here. Passive things that I'm not really going to use a lot, off to the side. Kings or might. Don't need to res somebody all the time, but once in a while I have a little hug thing for PvP when I want to piss people off. Anyways, excuse me. So the big thing, well, not really big, but when you have Seal of Insight and Seal of Righteousness, I generally keep Insight up just because if the healer that I'm with is having a really hard time giving the heals, well, they keep that up. That makes it a little bit easier, lightens the load on them. Excuse me. And it makes it a little bit easier so your healer can relax some. If your healer's just way overpowered, then use Seal of Righteousness so you're doing as much damage as you possibly can to characters and creating hate and threat. Also good if you're wanting to do a little bit more threat generation. If you're seeing people are taking the mobs off you way too easy, Seal of Righteousness is what you're going to want to have up. As a tank, you always want to have your Righteous Fury up, just because that's kind of the epitome or the essence of your tanking. It kind of is your main threat thing. What else? These are mostly from engineering, so don't worry about those if you don't have them. Really, this stuff here is all I use when I'm going to be running a dungeon or something. Ignore the sounds in the background, it's just my text. So, we came in a dungeon that's simple, so there's not really a threat, not really anything to worry about. And we're going to go over this quickly, and then we'll run into an actual dungeon that we're tanking for people. I came in here because it's a good place to farm battered hilts off these skeleton dudes here. Also a way to test the video out just to see how the frame rate is going before I actually get in a group of people and then I have to stop and I realize, oh, that's going to be crap, and I'm stuck tanking with people. All of them have a chance to drop it, the little casters and whatever. It's down to 17 frame rate, or 17 frames per second, which is kind of crappy. Anyway, so you get a group of mobs. Generally, this is how it goes. Consecration, I always lay first. If you're going to do farming, Consecration's good first. I also have V up, so this shows you the health bar. You press V, the health bar comes up or goes away. The reason for this is you can see what mobs are alive, what ones are around you, what ones you need to focus on, what ones are attacking other people, and when you have one mob left, it's easy to see where he's at, and you don't have to think. As a tank, you don't want to really be focused on having to think about what you're doing so much as just doing what you're wanting to do. Tanking where you need to tank. Now, it's pretty boring in here just as a simple little dungeon by yourself. It doesn't really show you a lot about tanking because there's no group, there's nobody, the other dynamics aren't really there. The pool, which is a general thing, like let's say there was a group behind me and I had a healer, the pool would start with, well, if we're just going to do this, because we probably wouldn't be, well, they're not going to be dead in one shot. So, what else can be said? Well, the abilities, why I have them set up this way, and then we'll go into the actual tanking of a group. Seems a little bit simpler. I don't like to move the mouse around a lot when I'm tanking, when I'm really doing anything. I use my keys. I like to type things. Where the controls are for me, the WSD, right above that, 4 is where my Judgment is. 1 is where my Adventure Shield is. The reason for this is I can easily pull things, but I've, I guess, trained myself or become accustomed to the position of Adventure Shield being there. 1 in from there is Taunt, and then we have Consecration, Judgment, the Hammer of Righteous, which is an AoE. Over here is the Crusader Strike. Don't ever really use it. Once in a while, if I need to do a single target, and every once in a while this happens, and Judgment is down, I have it there. It's in the back of my mind. I don't use it hardly ever, but it's there if I need it. Instead of keeping it down here with the main priority of things that I'm going to be using on a regular basis, I'd rather have it off to the side. I don't have to think about it. You want to keep things really simple so that when you're tanking, your focus is on your role, not so much where are my buttons at and what do they do. Realistically, I probably use 1 through 7. That's what I use most of the time. 9 gets tossed in there, which is the Holy Wrath, if there's a lot of mobs and I just want to do some extra damage. And I'll normally just go down and click it. It's not like that's part of the regular rotation. 8 once in a while, and I put it closer to these because, again, I type with my fingers. I once in a while will click down here. So I can, if I want to stretch, hit it and run if for some reason. I guess I don't know why it's there. It's there, so I knew where it's there. It's probably there because when I got it, I never moved it, and it stayed there and just got used to this setup. That's probably actually what it is. So now let's look at a dungeon. Okay, so we have a dungeon popped right up. Instant queue, I did a specific, I didn't do a random because I didn't really want to tank a dungeon, but I do want to show it. Okay, first thing I do when I get in a group is I find the healer and I set them as my focus. That's always the first thing I always do. Reason for that is you need to know where your healer is as a tank at all times. Not so much know where they're at, but be able to click on them and find them quickly and see if they're taking damage. Generally, people will mark the tank, makes it a little bit easier, so they know where he is. Always put up King's, Blessing of Kings when you start the group. And I always have V press so that the health bars are showing up and we can get on with this. Do the pull. In the beginning I want to start light. I don't want to really do this heavy because I want to see how my healer is going to be. And you're just building threat, you're just building hate, and you're making sure your group is safe. I'm noticing their health off to the side, nobody's taking real damage. The healer seems pretty good. So in this one, we'll do 2 pulls here, and we probably can pull a little bit further. Healer seems pretty good. So now we got a big one. Oop, now, yeah. Oh, we'll see. We'll see how good the healer is on this one. Starting to get a little lag there. Maybe I pulled too much. As a Paladin, they seem to want to pull a lot. So the rotation, it's not really a rotation. It seems to be mostly a button mash. Whatever's up at the time, click it. How to go through this? There is a rotation to it. I just don't ever really pay attention to the rotation. You're going to have to pull a little bit lighter on this because of the... whoa. Yeah, this is sloppy, and that's fine. I don't really care. It's not a, desperate dungeon. Why is that mod not moving? There. But the reason, there's a couple things you see. The health bar. Those are important as a tank. What else? So the healer seems pretty good, but my health goes down pretty quick. That's a gear issue. Here we have 1 pull. I don't see any mobs nearby. I generally will pull the mobs a little bit away from the group, so my face is towards them, the back is away from them. Also, if you get punted, that can be a bad thing. If they punt you, you get punted away from the healer. What are we doing here as far as the rotation? Consecrations always get laid down. Judgment on a single target, that's good for building hate. Hammer of Righteous, and then Holy Wrath. Generally make sure everyone is up before you pull. It's not really going to matter so much if you pull, but you do want your healer to be near you. I have 13 frame rate on this, so hopefully the video looks okay. So Judgment, Consecration, Hammer of Righteous. What do we have here? Shield of Righteous. That combination, when you have Consecration, Judgment, Hammer of Righteous, Shield of Righteous, builds a lot of threat as a tank. You go through that once, and you already have a decent amount of hate build up. For this boss, you just got to make sure you stay out of the wind thingies. And that's their technical name, wind thingies. It's important to have things just kind of relax when you're tanking. I guess the sound could be a little loud, so we'll have to turn that down after this boss is dead. I'm hearing that now. So apologize now for that. No gear. What am I doing here? Okay. Excuse me. So this is where the group's already ready. We got a nice big pool. Now we can actually hear. Hopefully I don't have, yeah. You gotta pay attention, that's the other thing. As a tank, you want to be looking at your group, because sometimes hunters will, you know, I don't know if they do it on purpose. They used to in the day. Maybe not so much now. But they'll pull a group that's not part of what the tank's pulling. And I don't know if they think, oh, he's going too slow, or they're just bored, or their pet, or they had it targeted when they walked up there and shot by accident. That happens. I don't know. I don't have a rant against hunters. They are what they are. So again, you know, you want to see your group. You want to know where your party is. I see that one warrior. He's not in with us. Don't know why. Maybe he's AFK. Doesn't really matter. But he's coming now. I don't, you know, I've played this boss fight on DPS. Don't really know it for tanking it, so it'll be interesting. Again, face the boss away from your group. Generally facing the mobs away from the group. And this is kind of old school. But in doing this, you get, you know, you get better at tanking. I can see them, but I don't need to be like right on top of them. It's pretty much whatever's up, whatever ability is up, just start running that on them. Also, I'll toss a taunt on there. I normally keep taunt free when I'm in small groups. The boss, you're going to be on there for a while, so you won't really need to worry about your taunt. But it is a good way if you see that you're losing hate for some reason. I don't know about these beams. I don't know what they're all about. What do they do? Whoa. Well, learning experience all the time. Ideally, if you want to look up the appropriate tanking rotation, you could do that. But mainly, I'm just... it's almost mashing buttons. But it's to the point where it's simple. We're watching my health, we're watching the healer, we're watching everyone else. Ooh, somebody else seems like they need to get in that beam. Part of that could be people just standing in junk. They don't need to be. This Hammer of Wrath comes up when the player's mob is, or the mob is at a lower health. And there we go. Some gear. Nice. No, it's lower. Oh, we'll forget about that. Also, they might be talking to me, I don't know, but this is pretty good. I'm okay with this as it is. Making sure your group is with you is an important thing. You have 1, 2 people. Don't see the healer. You could mark the healer. That would be another thing. I generally do that in smaller groups. Groups I'm not familiar with, I always mark the healer. Just so they can see the, what's going on. What is this goofball doing? Anyways. This seems to be the people that we're running with. Let's pull this other group here. It gives the healer something to do. Which is healing you. Maybe we might have to use... Oh, we'll see. Now see how those mobs went on those. You want to be able to see that and get a hold of them and taunt them off if they're still on them. Judgment, or Avenger Shield, good reason for that. It hits every mob, so it builds a little bit of threat. I'm not sure if it's a glyph or it's a certain point that it goes from hitting 3 targets to 5 targets. You could look into that. But I generally, well, not generally, but it does that. So it's important when you're pulling to be able to hit as many targets as you can to create hate in the beginning, because that's the initial pull. The initial pull is where you're going to run it. You're kind of setting the pace for how the run's going to go. Come on, boss, get in Can't really turn this boss away from everyone, so this one is just, you do a lot of damage. Couple abilities here. I talented this one, I believe. Execution Sentence. It either does a hammer of damage to a target or heals them. Well, I normally save that, because I don't need to just pour all the DPS, unless it's a DPS race. I don't need to really worry about trying to do as much damage as I can. It's all about holding the hate of the enemy and making sure there's not a single... Like here, they're kiting this mob back here. It's not my job to worry about that. I think that mob explodes if you got it near people, so it's better for them to kite it. What else can be said? Trying to think of anything that's relevant or needed in this. It's kind of brainless after a certain point. Once you have your... Really, these main four are the ones that you're going to be using the most. You use Avenger Shield for pulling, Taunt if you have a single target that's on your healer mostly, or a DPS, and just for whatever reason they have lots of damage they're pouring out. That's, you know, important. Again, you're using all your abilities on this because it's a boss fight. You don't need to worry about trying to taunt somebody off of... Well, taunting when it's necessary, but you don't need to worry about, like, the initial pull. Avenger Shield generally is for initial pull. It does a decent amount of damage. It hits multiple targets. My character is... Oh, the healer's fine. This boss is almost dead. This isn't a video on how to do this boss or how to do this dungeon. It's kind of just the basics of tanking. You see that in multiple pools with groups that are the same relevant level. I could have just, you know, stayed in the Paladin and focused on that, but you don't get to see the dynamics. They don't come up. You know, there is no group pool. There is no whatever. I didn't get any loot from that. Oh, well, this fun thing. Now, I found that for whatever reason, if a hunter has a nice little speed boost, it can help boost people through this. Their group speed works pretty good, but I don't see a hunter here. Oh well. Warriors can jump over it. Come on, get in there. I've actually, for whatever reason, I was on my hunter, and I disengaged off the edge and died. Random fact. I don't know why. I laughed because I didn't think it was possible, but then everyone was like, come on back. And they had to wait. But they didn't wait, you know, because people don't like to wait in groups. They just like, oh, the hunter, we don't need him, and we'll come back. That worked well. We have everyone up here? No? Like to be fair. I could just pull. We don't really need him, you know, DPS-wise. But I want to be nice. I'm a kind person. That's generally how I run. Pull this crap. Turn so you're facing the group. And then you just start AoEing. A lot of times I'll find that I'm not paying attention to what I'm hitting. And the thing will be behind me, and I'm like mashing buttons. And which is fine. It's not attacking everyone else. But like right now I'm kind of out of range for some of this stuff. And that's kind of it. I mean, it doesn't, you know, it's not too complicated. Just a lot of basics. You really, once you know your fights, and you know your healer can keep you up, you can kind of play with it, especially as a Paladin tank. You can determine, like here, there's not a lot of mobs, like there's not a lot of packs together. It's pretty much just this guy. I feel like we're going backwards in here. Oh well. We will find out if that was a mistake on my part. It might have been. Oh well. Don't really matter. And see, now, with a lot of this background being red, it's easy to not see that mobs are alive or they're dead. So with the health bars being up, that's an important little feature. I guess we could have went either way. Here we go. Pull the mob. Come on, goofball. Over here. Now I generally like to pull it away from the group, just because, or at least face it away from the group. There's sometimes you get mobs that do this AoE, or it's a range thing, and it's in front of them, and generally that's a bad thing to throw against your group. So you're really, as a tank, wanting to pull the mob away. I mean, these little things, if you memorize them and start incorporating them, your tanking will feel like it's going up instantly, or remarkably. When you get people saying, oh, good tanking, blah, 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 that's how you know you're doing well. So your goal as a tank is to always be doing well. Now this fight, It's not a fight against, or it's not a, this is not how to do this fight, it's how to tank. Again, faced away from the group. This one you just got to focus on the mobs when they're coming there, because the birds will start picking people up and carrying them away. So we're just looking for that. Like this guy here. Throw this on him. That's the best I can do. I can throw this at him. And he's dead. Again, they'll say, oh, good tanking. Yes, because you're paying attention. As a tank, you want to be protecting your group. That's kind of the role, protecting the group. Holding the hate of the enemies, and everybody think about it. I can't see everyone. Once you have your rotations down, once you know what you're going to be doing as a tank, you can kind of relax some and think about the role. The role is protecting everyone else. There's that stupid bird. Ay, ay, ay. Oh, man. There. Range should have that. We're going to get away from this edge. Come on. Get over here. And that's it. You know, I could... Once in a while, things will come to me, but I'm not really seeing anything offhand. It's like, oh, this is also important. It's, you know, it's easy to make it simple. It's also easy to complicate it. So as a as a roll, here we got this. Let's get this goofball. Get that dumb thing down. And back to tanking. Mob's almost dead. We're standing in something. That's not good. Again, my frame rate is really low. It's 12. Come on, kill the boss. He's dead. He's dead. He's almost dead. We got this bubble. We got this Captain Goofball here. Come on. There. And he's dead. And that's it. You know, from one run, this is pretty cool stuff. Don't normally get to see all this. Don't know what that is. That's interesting. It's also low. Oh yeah, I picked a low dungeon. And that's it. That's kind of the basics of tanking. Yeah, the video is sloppy, but you know, you get what you get.